What's good, people? Time for another Magic Man review. Today's review is Stalin's War by McMeekin. I was really looking forward to this book, and it did not disappoint. It seems to me like the bigger the book, sometimes this one's a brick. um, the more satisfied I am with it because there's a lot of good information there. I have been wrong at times. Stalin's War. It's really one aspect of the wars of the 20th century. A lot of people don't know that they think the First and Second World Wars were two different events, and they were, but there were so many different wars in between the First World War because everybody was fighting over their little patch of land in Europe because all the different monarchies have been broken up, and plus you had the spread of communist influence in Europe. You had the Russian Revolution, and you had the Soviet-Polish War, where the Soviet Union invaded Poland and got beaten back. It didn't really get into who Stalin was. People don't know who Stalin was. People think, oh, he was just this Russian dictator. He was cruel and brutal. No, he was, well, yeah, that is kind of true. He was a dictator, and he was beyond brutal. He was just out of his mind crazy. Crazy like a fox. Stalin was a Georgian revolutionary, a communist revolutionary, and he was raising money for the revolution by robbing banks and armored cars. He was pretty much a gangster. And this book primarily deals with when Stalin's in power. It doesn't get into the weeds about his background, stuff like that. It just assumes that you know who he is. And for the most part, who doesn't know about Stalin? To understand this book, it really helps if you understand Marxist-Leninist ideology. That helps out. It's not totally necessary. You'll read this book and you'll say to yourself, man, why are they doing this? Why are they acting in this manner? What's the mindset behind it? If you understand Marxist-Leninist ideology and how they think and how they do things, it pretty much just sums down to this. You can lie, cheat, and steal and do whatever you want to. Communism is the end game. Okay, it's the utopian pie in the sky. Socialism is what they were. The Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, that's the USSR. Okay, people's like, oh, they weren't socialists. Yeah, they were. They said it in their name, okay? They don't care what train you get on. The destination is still the same. They can get on Democratic train, Democratic Socialist train. They can be monarchs and get on the monarchy train. But the end destination is communism. And they'll lie when they have to. They'll cheat when they have to. And they'll tell you anything they want you to hear. Just because they can get their agenda. That's Marxist-Leninist ideology, kind of in a nutshell. It's not really complicated. It's just cutthroat. That's all. This book, you really I can't emphasize enough how good this book was. There's a million little tidbits in this book, a million little jewels you can pluck out of here. The West and most of the world have been infiltrated by communist agents. Going back from, well, the Tsar had his own police, but they weren't really revolutionary police. They were anti-revolutionary police within Russia. But the Soviets and the Bolsheviks, they had a different agenda. They were revolutionaries, so they put in spies and they put in their agents, and they would seek out fellow travelers, people who were had a collectivist mindset to begin with, and so they were infiltrate everywhere, all throughout, from the bottom to the top of every government and every society and every institution. They would have their agents in there trying to steer things their way for the benefit of Russia, the Soviet Union. They wanted worldwide communist revolution. They thought that was the best way to go. see what else. It's very hard for Americans or people in the maybe not so much as Europe, because Europe's been around a little bit longer. They don't have that naivete that a lot of people in the United States have. People in the United States, they're too nice for their own good sometimes. They're just suckers. They really are. I hate to say it, but it's true. Um, Americans kind of get wrapped up in just putting food on the table. Most Americans don't have time to research stuff like that. And you tell them, like, oh, this government is totally infiltrated. One of the books that really gets into communist infiltration of the United States is called Blacklisted by History, and how Joe McCarthy was right. Joe McCarthy was right. People say, no, you're red baiting. That's a red scare. It's McCarthyism. You'll hear that a lot. No, McCarthy was right. The army was infiltrated. Hell, the Treasury Department, the head of the Treasury Department, was a Russian asset from the KGB and NKVD. All these little Russian spy agencies, they had all their kinds of different agents in the United States, in England, France, China, Japan, everywhere. In Germany, they had their own agents in Nazi Germany. So people like to say, well, blah, 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 this. It's just crazy how heavily infiltrated the United States institutions were, especially the Army. The Army was heavily infiltrated, okay? And people like say, oh, that's McCarthyism, when they're trying to, what they're saying is that you're trying to smear somebody and bash them just to beat him down for no reason at all. No, Joe McCarthy was right. And the reason they know he's right, and a lot of the information that comes in this book, is because when the USSR fell, when they disintegrated and they split up into different little countries, the archives of the KGB and the NKVD were opened up, and all this wealth of information came out. It's like Joe McCarthy was absolutely right. Not only that, what he did was an understatement. But this book, it deals with a lot of stuff in there. And he gets a lot of information from the files that opened up. This book couldn't have been written unless those files had been opened up during the 90s when the Soviet Union collapsed. It'll tick you off in a little bit because it's really horrible. What we have in the United States are called champagne socialists. These people... I'm not talking about the bottom guys on the bottom that don't have really anything and they want something for themselves, and they see how things are kind of... They're getting the bottom end. They're getting a raw deal, basically. Now, I'm not talking about these people. I'm talking about the people who are born rich and they just have this collectivist mindset because it's chic. It's cool, to be a socialist, Especially with people sometimes that are rich. Not all of them. Some of them like that. These are people who are usually born into the money. They were born on second base and they think they hit a home run. These are those kinds of people, and you'll read about them in this book. This book was really good about myth busting. There's a lot of myths that are portrayed about World War II and the mythology of the war, that it was America's good war. It was a good war. Let me tell you something. There's no such thing as a good war. Especially if you're getting hit by artillery, okay? Or you're getting droned to death. Somebody's dropping a hand grenade on you from a drone. There's nothing good about that. There's nothing good about bleeding to death and agonizing pain, all right? It wasn't a good war. And if you read this book and information in here, you realize how it's like no wars are really good, There's nothing good about sitting in a hospital bed with tubes coming out of you, all right? A lot of... I paint with a broad brush sometimes, but it's kind of true, and I'm only going from my own experience. I've met people who's like, oh yeah, that was good, we're going to go in there, we're going to kick their butt, you're going to drop bombs all over them, go in there. I'm like, oh yeah? You ever been in the military? Oh no, they wouldn't let me because I was too fat. I was like, why don't you lose some weight and go volunteer, hotshot, tough guy. Go in there and go shoot them, see what happens to you. It's people like that, the coffee shop commandos, the armchair generals, People who never even shot a Daisy BB gun. They don't know anything about that. But they're more than happy to send your kids off to war. All right? So you got some of that mentality. I've met people like this. Say, oh, I'm out here fighting for your rights. I'm protesting. I was like, I don't remember seeing you on those yellow footprints when I got off the bus. All right? Where were you there? Nah. People like to talk. It's okay. Humans are human. Another myth in here that Poland was a victim during World War II, and they were, but the Poles are no angels, okay? And I know a lot of Polish people. I love Polish people. They're cool as hell. Unless it's dealing with, when you're talking about Russians, then they go ape shit, you know. They are just totally retarded when it comes to Russians. Like, I hate Russians so much, you know. They will tell you all kinds of stuff, you know. But when Hitler and Stalin were, no, it was Hitler. When Hitler was making his deal for the Sudetenland in Czechoslovakia, and he invaded Czechoslovakia, Poland was taking their little cut too. And I didn't know this, but Germany and Poland had a non-aggression pact. So, like I alluded to earlier, that the Poles were really afraid of the Russians coming back for round number 2, okay, or round number 1500, whatever. They fight each other so much over in Europe. It's just crazy. But they didn't want the Soviets to invade them like they did before in the 20s. And the Germans couldn't help them back then because they were dealing with their own internal revolution. You had, you know, one socialist faction, the National Socialist, and you had different little other socialist faction fighting the communist socialists. And they were all vying for power. So they couldn't really help the Poles. The Poles were really on their own. Americans helped out a little bit. Some of the other Europeans helped out. But they were pretty much on their own. And so after that went through, the Germans actually had a non-aggression pact with Poland. Okay, I didn't know that. There's some really good stuff in here, and I read a lot of history. I love reading history books. I didn't know that. And there's some good stuff in here. It's too much stuff for me, really, to even get into and to have this. I'm not going to sit here for 45 minutes to shoot a video. I'm going to give you the juicy cuts. Try not to ruin it for you. So you can go out there and read it for yourself. I try to only do books that make me, that I enjoy. What's the point of reading stuff that you don't really like? Now the Axis powers, I've gone over this before, but in case you're new to this channel and you're not really a history buff, you'll see things like you'll see in the news sometimes. This was big during W's term when he was president. He said that he labeled was it Iraq and Afghanistan? Yeah, Iraq and Afghanistan and North Korea as the axis of evil. Okay. Another stupid remark. An axis is 2. Okay, your car has 2 axes. Okay, an axis is usually a pole. The Axis powers was Germany and Italy. Okay, they're like, oh, what about Japan? Japan was never a true ally of Germany or Italy. They were kind of fellow travelers. They had the same effed up mentality as the National Socialists did in Germany. They had that supremacist ideology where we're better than you. You're racially inferior. So because of natural selection and like social Darwinism, we're going to come in here and just take your stuff and kill you because you don't deserve it. You're stupid, I've heard the same argument that Yahweh's chosen people have made about the Arabs. These people, they don't know what they're doing with their land. If we come in here, look what all the good stuff we can do. We need to just go ahead and force these people into a ghetto and bomb them, okay? And they wonder why people are mad at them. What's going on? Why is this hatred coming from? Oh, that's funny. The real allies in World War II, when it started off, and it really shocked people, but it really shouldn't have, because they had kind of been built up to be against each other, was Stalin and Hitler. Those were the 2 big allies, and they carved up Europe in between themselves. Got to read the book. I kind of knew this myself. There's a lot of Russians out there in the internet, on YouTube. If you're into alternative media and you want to look at a different point of view from what's presented to you, like rah rah rah, America's great, America's good, we do everything great, we're awesome, America, F yeah. No. If you want to get an alternative point of view, sometimes you'll get these Russians coming in there, and a lot of them, I mean, they're old, so they're kind of got their mindset, and they were raised in the Soviet Union. You know, guys that are like me but older, guys in their 40s and their 50s and their 60s, they'll say, "Oh yeah," and they'll whitewash the stuff that Stalin did. Nope, you can't make an excuse of that. When the Germans invaded Poland, so did Stalin. The Russians invaded in there too. And it was like, oh well, you know, they had it coming. They were, you know, okay. What about Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania? What about Finland? Did they have it coming too? Were they a big giant threat to the Soviet Union? Was Estonia a threat to the Soviet Union? Hell no. It was a land grab. Most of I'm not gonna get into it. I got more stuff to cover. Franklin Delano Roosevelt. I'm just gonna come out and say he's a piece of shit. A lot of people, like my grandparents' generation, the GI generation, they thought he was the best thing because they saw him as their savior, the man on the white horse that came in there and helped them out when the Dust Bowl ran through and then the Depression ran through, and people were out of work and they were starving. And plus, he helped. He was America's leader during the Second World War. Just like Woodrow Wilson before him, he was a horrible individual. Just horrible. You read some of the stuff in here, it's like, man. And I already knew about some of the stuff. He was a thief. All right, let's get right down to it. He was a thief. He stole from the American people. All right, he nationalized the gold. I mean, he didn't go door to door, send the cops to everybody's house. But he sent out his treasury agents. And people who had gold in their safety deposit boxes, he would take it. It says, "Oh, I'm nationalize it," and gave him back, you know, what it was worth, and then revalued it later at a higher price. He stole from people, all right, and that he did a whole bunch of crap. He got it. These presidents, and this is true today. They'll tell you all the BS that you want to hear. Woodrow Wilson. He ran on keeping America out of the war, the First World War. Roosevelt ran on keeping America out of the war. Who else? Nixon, he said we're going to end the Vietnam War, and he did. We kind of escalated it before. That's kind of like Republicans. They're like, we're going to end the war. We're going to end it on our terms. We're going to bomb you to hell. And Nixon, he bombed Laos and Cambodia. But eventually they ended the war under Nixon, the Vietnam War. The same thing with Trump. He said, I'm going to end if you elect me president, I'm going to get us out of this war. Still fighting in Ukraine. He's still sending weapons. That's typical of Republicans. He's not really a Republican. He's a Democrat. But he's like, it escalated some more before I realized I can't really do anything. Just walk away. That's what they do. But they always want to take you to war. Always. And the American people, they're good people. We get a bad rap sometimes over here. It's like, oh, you guys are a bunch of assholes. No, I mean, most Americans are salt of the earth. You know, they'll give you the shirt off their back. I've lived here all my life. I was born here. I know what I'm talking about. Americans are good people. They're not always the brightest crown in the box, but they're good people. When you tell the American people, it's like, if you're given options, is we're going to go to war, or we're going to just go mind our business. Most of the time, if they don't feel that they've been threatened or attacked, they're going to mind their own business. They don't want to go off into a war. But the politicians always sucker them to a war. Always. You'll see this in here too. And all the stupid stuff that Roosevelt did during the Second World War, it's crazy. It's crazy. Now, if this video cuts out, sometimes that happens, I'm going to go ahead and do a part 2 of this video. Look at this book. Look at this brick, okay? There's a lot of good stuff in this book, and I don't want to, I want to get my good chops in, all right? The thing about the Second World War, in the First World War to an extent, people don't know this, the United States was already at war with Germany to begin with. As soon as Britain was in the war, the United States was in the war. We were sending them Lend-Lease material. And if you're sending war material, somebody's sending war material to your enemy, then that's your enemy too. You've heard of a friend of my no, an enemy of my enemy is my friend. Well, it works the other way too. If somebody's out there and they're sending war material and helping out your enemy, that's your enemy too. So the United States was already at war with Germany before war was declared, and Hitler declared war on the United States first. So and Italy followed suit, but it's just a practicality. They were already at war to begin with, and the Germans were already sinking U-boats in the Atlantic. That's a little different, but during the Lend-Lease, when you read about the Lend-Lease, all the stuff we sent over to Britain, the majority of it went to Russia, and the American taxpayer just got taken for a sucker. United States global sucker got suckered in. It's crazy. Another goofball thing that Roosevelt did, he told the Axis powers that they had to surrender unconditionally, which made him want to fight till the bitter end. Dumb. The Germans already didn't like Hitler to begin with. They wanted to overthrow him. The German general staff hated him. They called him a Bohemian corporal. He was Austrian. He wasn't even German. I didn't know that the Japanese had suggested a different peace proposal to the Americans before the war started. It was like, hey, listen, we're doing some messed up stuff in China. Yeah, you kind of caught us. And the world got attention to the stuff that the brutal treatment that the Japanese were inflicting upon the Chinese people, and they got really mad at Germany. And not Germany, but Japan. Even the Germans were kind of like, man, that's some messed up stuff y'all doing over there. And so the Japanese said, hey, we'll pull out of China and we can work something out. Roosevelt was like, nope, we ain't doing that. They were determined to go to war. Roosevelt was. And so many of his other fellow travelers. And the author is like, well, this is part of Stalin's scheme. This fall into Stalin's playbook. You got to read it. It's good stuff. Let's see. The United States could have stayed out of both world wars. From my mindset and what I've been taught and led to believe in the past was the United States was forced into the Second World War because the attack on the attack on Pearl Harbor by Japan. After I read this book, I was like, nope, we could have stayed out of this war. We could have reached something. We could have reached a separate deal with the Japanese. It's just crazy. The words you want to get into your mind when you read this book is treason. Absolute treason. And by the United States, congressmen, treasury officials, the president, everybody. Nobody was on America's side. Except, like the regular people on the ground. Let's see. If you want to understand Stalin, if you really want to understand the world, read stuff like this, because you'll understand how this world works. Who runs the world? Who's ruling the earth? The same people who've always ruled the earth. The highly intelligent and the utterly ruthless. All right? And that's what Stalin was. Make no bones about it. The man was just a straight up gangster. And not like, oh yeah, gangster, throw up some hands, throw up some sets. No, this guy killed millions. Drop of the hat. When his son got taken as a POW by the Germans, they wanted to trade him out. It's like, no, you keep him. He's a traitor anyway for surrendering. And he arrested his wife, his own daughter-in-law. Messed up people, man. Just messed up. But you have to understand Marxist-Leninist ideology. And you'll understand. It's like, man, these people are messed up. Why are they doing this stuff? You have to understand that. You really do. It's still a good read if you don't understand that. You won't get it, kind of. He's like, they're just horrible, evil people. No, they're calculated. They've got a game plan, okay? They know what they're doing. All right. There's just so many hidden nuggets in here. It's a Eurocentric book, but it also deals with stuff in the East, like with Japan and Chiang Kai-shek, who got the short end of the stick, even though he was kind of a gangster too. Lots of little nuggets in here. Lots of good, really good nuggets. People today, they like to compare Vladimir Putin to Stalin. It's like, oh, he's the new Stalin, or he's the new Hitler, he's the Putler. Nah. I think Putin was a lawyer by trade. That's what he was. He was a lawyer. He was like, oh, he's a KGB. Yeah, you got a lot of bureaucrats in those agencies. Like, people say, oh, I was in the CIA. I said, what did you do in the CIA? Oh, I pushed paper. I wrote out these legal forms. You can't put somebody in front of a firing squad without making it legal, huh? That's the kind. Yeah, no, Putin's no Stalin. If you want to look at a world leader who, in my mind, who most resembles Stalin, it's Erdogan of Turkey. That guy's crafty and he's messed up, and he boxes him. He pays himself in a corner sometimes, and somebody, or just the luck of the draw, he gets bailed out. This is crazy. But Erdogan is like the new modern day Stalin, by the way he does things. He doesn't have all the power that Stalin had. If he did, watch out. He would make that, pan-Turkic dream happen. Now, the only thing that this book that I didn't like, or I kind of was like, because you can make up stuff with statistics. I like the statistics. This book was very, this book had a bibliography. I love footnotes in here. Very well documented. Very good. But one thing about here in this book that I didn't like, and it would have kind of been dry if he didn't do it, but he kind of puts his interpretation in there sometimes. He's like, well, Stalin thought this. Well, Churchill thought that. And, yeah, Mussolini was thinking this. I'm thinking to myself, were you a mind reader? You know what they were thinking? I mean, sometimes you can kind of, like, infer what they were thinking. You can guess, or they kind of said in notes. But sometimes it's like, this is what he was thinking. Like, how do you know what he was thinking? You got a crystal ball? You some kind of swami or something? Nah, you didn't know what they're thinking. A mind reader. But it was a good book. It was a really good book. I highly recommend it. Go out and get it. I went and got it at the library. But if you're a World War II history buff, you got to put this one in your library. You have to. You just have to. You will not understand the Second World War, especially in the Eastern Front, and without reading this book. So go ahead and check it out. Going a little bit long here. It's a big book. Stalin's War by McMeekin. Until next time, people. Oh, almost forgot. Like and subscribe. All right, helps me out with the algorithms.